Hi, I'm Jesse Gilstrap.
And I am Drew Cordell. Welcome to TV Binge Drinking.
Wow, you sound like you've had a few.
Yeah.
On this episode, I'm drinking a passion papaya green tea from Panera Bread. It's a frequent go-to of mine, and I feel like any green beverage will be themed enough when it comes to fitting to the Mandalorian. Little less than all the additives and so forth I had in the last episode, but nothing wrong with just a plain old passion papaya green tea. And also had fitting for this episode cream of chicken and wild rice soup that I could also sip on,
Yes.
since this is the one of the episodes that we're watching features said meme friendly moment. Well, practically any moment with the child is made for memes, but so it goes.
Right. And now that you're not drinking the child blended up this week, it's a little more appropriate and a little more meme friendly too. I I myself am just sipping on some herbal relaxation tea from Trader Joe's in my Old Faithful Moose mug. Nothing too Star Wars related with it, but you can't beat a reliable moose. And I've had this mug for I want to say it's going on 10 years. It's been a while. I can't remember if I had it when we were roommates, but I don't believe it. If it wasn't then, it wasn't too long after that I acquired it. So it's been with me a long time. So
I certainly don't remember the old faithful news.
it's I think I had it. I think I got it maybe right shortly before I moved in to my apartment in Paducah by myself, which would have that would have been in 2012. So about 8 years I've had it. So that sounds about right.
I'm certainly not going to swear I've never seen it, but
Yeah, I can't remember for sure, but either way, I've had it for nearly a decade, and it's my go-to tea mug that I use when the child mug is not available because I've already drank a bunch of coffee out of it. That's what I've had a few of tonight. Hopefully, will be able to relax, which I am right now. So
and that's a good thing. Relaxing with a trusty mug. On the last episode, the first episode covering The Mandalorian, we watched three episodes that essentially were individual but also worked as a unit. They have a nice arc to them, and we basically talked about them in so many ways as one sort of unit, especially when it comes to the characters that carry over across the whole thing and seeing the series shaping up to be exactly what it's going to be.
right,
On this episode, we get the episodic version of The Mandalorian. These episodes are very distinct from one another. Chapter 4, Sanctuary, which is directed by none other than Bryce Dallas Howard. I mentioned on the last episode how I thought that the deliberate pace of Mandalorian reminded me, in some ways at least, of Solo, a Star Wars story,
yes,
which was directed by Ron Howard, Bryce's father, and also happens to have Jon Favreau, the creator of The Mandalorian, as a character. Of course, there's lots of connections within the Star Wars universe like that. Nonetheless, it's interesting to see Bryce Dallas Howard be a director, and on this episode, no less.
yes.
What do you make of Sanctuary, Drew?
I've got a lot of positive things to say about it. I love the kind of the visuals in this one. I like the planet. It's a little bit of a different setup. We've had a little bit of snow, a little bit of rocky terrain, kind of not quite desert uh, on Navarro, but kind of like a Great Plains kind of planet. Change things up. We kind of got a forest, some woods, lakes, things of that nature. Really like this planet. I like the costumes, and obviously this one more or less is very. I mentioned last episode that the show, in addition to having the Western vibe, really does kind of have a samurai movie vibe too. And yes, the samurai and Western genres have a lot in common and oftentimes emulate each other, but they're also very distinct from one another. This one is very much more akin to samurai films. Specifically, this one reminds me a lot of Seven Samurai in plot and in style, and I think it's intentional and it's done pretty well. I like the story of the villagers and being oppressed by these raiders that kind of look like the Georgia Bulldogs. It's like the best way I can think of it. The mascot for or probably for every Bulldog team, but specifically I'm thinking of Georgia. But anyway, and even though I kind of just spoofed them a little bit, I like the design of these characters, these creatures, this race. They are pretty cool. These raiders, and they have, as revealed later in the episode, they have in their employ an ATST, which is cool to see. And I just kind of like the whole vibe that this is kind of a casual escape for Mando, and he just kind of w- walks his way into helping them, which I kind of dig that. Again, his motivations are to protect the child now and just try to find work where he can and try to make it survive. He's turned his back on the guild. He has people hunting for him, but he's also a decent person deep down, as we've discovered. Although being cold, calculating as he also, even deeper down, is caring. And when he sees people that are less fortunate or unable to defend themselves, he's more than willing to aid them. So, and also it's also to his benefit as well. It's kind of a double edged sword, but I think we see that it kind of weighs more on the caring side. I do think this one, it's kind of hard to say. I think it meanders a little bit. It doesn't really, and again, it's the episodic nature, and it makes sense, the pacing, but it just kind of not lose my interest, but it kind of loses my anticipation a little bit. Again, I've seen it before, but I remember feeling this way the first time. It's not as frenetically paced as the other episodes we've seen where there's build up. But again, it's three connected episodes. This is a standalone, more or less. But other than that, I don't really have too much negative to say about it. I really like Cara Dune, who played by Gina Carano, and I am a huge fan of hers. I really liked her. Of course, I thought she was funny in Deadpool, but initially going back to Haywire, which is a very underrated film that she starred in.
Thank you, Steven Soderbergh.
Yes, thank you. She would not be on my radar if it weren't for that movie, and probably not a lot of people's, and maybe not even on this show. But I am a huge fan of her physical presence. She can do great fight scenes, and I think she's a good actress as well. And I like her in this role. Kind of get a little glimpse of who she is. Not nothing too much, but enough to care a little. Kara, no, okay, I won't rim shot that, but she aids them as well, and they're kind of like trying to train them, these villagers, how to fight. I enjoyed that kind of thing. Again, it's a little. I've seen it done before. I've seen things like this before, but I also like the vibe of it as well. So, and it's a good episode. I really did like the kind of the final battle to a degree. Like the ATST just looks cool with those red eyes. Looks terrifying at night, and it's just kind of, I really like the visuals. It makes this episode kind of stand out. It's a decent episode. I don't, I don't think I put it in the same category with what we've seen before, especially the last two episodes. But it's a solid standalone episodic type adventure of the week episode. I would probably give it a B. Uh, I think it's I think it could be a little bit better, but for what it is, it's got a lot of nice little touches to it. I think it does meander a little bit, but it's a nice little episode. I enjoy kind of that feeling of these people, and it's kind of a cozy episode, I guess. That's kind of what I think of. You have I've barely even talked about the child, but there are a lot of really, as you were saying, meme friendly moments. The broth and all of that, sipping on the broth, watching them fight. That was really enjoyable. There's just some wholesome moments in it. I appreciate that, and the the Howard family, I think, has a nice little legacy with Star Wars going now. I would like to see Bryce maybe have her hand at some more directing within Star Wars, not even, just Mandalorian. I would like to see her do some other things, or even beyond Star Wars, but specifically to it. I could see her, doing a good job. I think a lot of the action, a lot of the things that make Star Wars were very much present and done in a very distinct way, and I think she did a good job.
Honestly, if I was going to criticize anything about this episode in particular, it would be the writing, and that's Jon Favreau again on this episode.
Right.
And it's not even that it's bad. I don't think this episode is bad. It's just derivative.
Yeah.
Like, my problem with it isn't even uh, necessarily that you lose momentum, because I think there's enough in here to kind of justify, the episodic nature of it. It's a big, wide galaxy. It's not necessarily going to, like, if you're going to follow the Mandalorian's journey with the child, it makes sense that it wouldn't just be one big narrative point to another. And you do get obviously that nice touch of, yeah, he's gonna be followed
Right.
there at the end. Like, he's not gonna be able to have a sanctuary because they're being followed and the target is too valuable. But like, it's the plot is something that we've seen 100 million times before, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing in itself. I just feel like the episode doesn't do enough to justify its uniqueness. The warrior coming in to save the helpless villagers, seen it done better too many times. And so this episode, I think a solid B is exactly where I would place it as well, because it's certainly not bad. Yeah, it's actually good. It's a solid, good episode with a lot of fun little touches. It's pleasant. It's fun. Thank goodness it's not the entire series.
Right.
You want more there to want to stay on this journey, basically.
Yeah.
But it's nice to spend time with the characters. I don't want to jump too far ahead of myself, because we'll talk about the season in total more when we get to the end of it.
Right. Right.
But the season's only 8 episodes, so when you have an episode that feels kind of superfluous, really jumps out at you more. But I do think that Bryce Dallas Howard does a terrific job of directing it. It has plenty in it that feels natural, feels like you kind of get in with the characters. I think that the character moments help sell this episode more than anything. You really get a sense of not just plowing through. You get a sense of, and these are these people, if that makes any sense. You don't want to just be you don't want a show to be a function of plot. You want to actually spend time with characters, and that's a saving grace of the episode.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good, and I definitely like Gina Carano. She's terrific presence. We get to see more of her moving forward, but this is a good place to go. I also really like the hints at theoretical romantic life, as short-lived as it might be for Mando and O'Mara, Julia Jones. That's just a sweet little detail in the story, basically. And you see, Mandalorian kind of pushing on his nature in different ways. Like a you can, it's funny because like everything's underneath the helmet, but you can almost imagine him like, oh, what would this life be like?
Yes.
Like when he's looking out the window, takes his helmet off.
In a lot of ways, it reminded me of Aragorn in the Two Towers. While he's amongst the Rohirrim, he briefly kind of considers Eowyn as someone he could be with, and
Yeah,
you know, it's definitely on a much larger scale, completely different thing. But this kind of it's kind of a similar beat, and I actually really like it in this. I don't think it's too derivative of anything, but I got that vibe, and I think it naturally, it fit the character, it fit the story, kind of that life yearning for being able to not only be with someone but just be comfortable, be at rest. But very short-lived thought, much less short-lived execution if he were to do it. So um, I did like that.
but yeah, solid B episode, and then we move on to chapter 5, the Gunslinger. This one returning from chapter 1 as a director, Dave Filoni, and this one, even more than chapter 1, feels like a Dave Filoni episode. At least that's definitely what I thought. There's so many little Star Wars touches, and he is, you know, huge Star Wars nerd, and I say that with complete affection towards him.
Right.
I don't know if anybody knows Star Wars in the same way that he does. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that are huge Star Wars fans, but this guy really understands it and appreciates it on practically every level.
Right.
I don't know if you watched any of the uh, gallery episodes behind the scenes of The Mandalorian.
I did. I did.
It's the one bit where Filoni goes on this geeky tangent about how important the battle in Episode One, Phantom Menace, is between Qui Gon, Obi Wan, Darth Maul, and he extends it from Episode One to Episode Six, where Vader makes sacrifice to save his son, and
Right.
the whole shape of Lucas's saga, Lucas's genius, as he puts it, in telling that story, and it really is a well thought out story. I think like, you can nitpick things here or there as it goes, but nonetheless, like Lucas knows how to structure a story.
Right.
Watching him kind of go into those details is really fun. The point is, like watching this episode, The Gunslinger, I've really enjoyed seeing Tatooine again,
Yes.
place we've been to many times, but also seeing it in this post Return of the Jedi world and going back to a bar now run by a droid,
Yep.
where droids were once not welcomed. Getting to see as well a Lothcat. It was from Star Wars Rebels, seeing it in live action.
Right.
It's just really cool. It's fun and very revealing in all the little details. And that's a big part of what sold me on this episode. Once again, you have a story that I think is, I don't want to say derivative, but we definitely seen this type of story before with the sniper bounty hunter kind of thing, waiting out till sundown, betrayal, all these little things. But I enjoy the way this story plays out just the same. Especially because like even though I like the little details, I like even the time we spend away from the Mandalorian and how it's still basically about him. It's telling us about this world that he's been a part of
Right.
and kind of what separates him and how he's moving away from it. Yeah, you can tell that Filoni wrote this episode, and I'm definitely a big fan of his and what he brings to the table. But I also have to say that I'm also a big fan Ming-Na Wen in this episode. Mulan live action currently on Disney Plus and its premiere access, paying around $30 to watch it. She's the original Mulan and also was on the show Agents of Shield, which is a show that I think got better as it went along. It really found itself and had an interesting thing going on in the background of the Marvel universe. But I really enjoyed her in this episode as the Fennec Shand, uh, watching her kind of, you know, be this dangerous bounty hunter, renowned force that, like a lot of them that you see in this type of thing, don't last very long. Oh, it's this big bad, and they're gone. Jake Cannavale, son of Bobby, he plays a perfect cocky young dude, a perfect little foil of sorts. And I definitely have to mention Amy Sedaris
Right.
because she's just absolutely wonderful. I feel like that's one of my favorite things about this episode is actually seeing uh, this character that's not in the main line of the action, so to speak, but it's just back there with their droids and protective sort and just a fun, eccentric character that adds kind of a depth of reality to the world. And that's again, that's something that I think this episode does really well is not only play with Star Wars lore, but really feel like it's a part of a lived-in reality.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that's yeah something that reminds me a lot of Clone Wars and Rebels that Filoni also uh, was behind. This really feels like it's part of something. You feel like you're just taking a glimpse into a part of this huge universe. What do you think of Gunslinger?
This is one I remember kind of not liking as much as I did this time. And I don't know. I didn't not like it, but it was kind of, I think, more a B than a B plus, which I'm kind of sitting on right now because I enjoyed it a little bit more this time for some of the reasons you mentioned, and then just kind of picking up on a couple of little details that I didn't the time before. But I like this story, and again, like you said, it's whether you've watched well read a bunch of Star Wars bounty hunter type stories or like actual bounty hunter stories outside like set in reality or anything like that or law enforcement stories or anything. It's a similar story. I've actually been rewatching the show Justified a lot lately,
Awesome.
so and it's a great show. One of my absolute favorites. But there are a lot of episodes in that kind of have this similar story. But I completely agree that I like the way that Filoni does it. It has its own flavor to it, and it's a very much Star Wars flavor. But it's also different than the some things we've seen in Star Wars before. This kind of has more of a, I don't want to use the word swashbuckling, but more of a roguish take because even though Mando is, I believe, a good character, there's also a little bit of an anti-hero there to him because he just because of the nature of his profession. And I I like that he is almost, this. he's like the man with no name in this. A lot, like you said, a lot when he's off screen, it's really about him. They're talking about him, or there's something that's revealed that speaks to his character. He's larger than life, or at least his reputation precedes him, and his presence speaks louder than his words. But I like that vibe to it, and I also really enjoy some of the just the little touches that he is a lot more knowledgeable of Tuscan Raiders, the Sand People, who we've previously just seen kind of as blanket bad creatures, whether they attack Luke Skywalker in A New Hope or or kill Shmi Skywalker and proceed to be annihilated by Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones. Here they actually are trying to reason and bargain, and I like that. Again, this kind of speaks to Mando's true core that he's more willing to be diplomatic than he is to just go guns blazing. And I enjoy these new characters. I gotta say real quick that opening is a lot of fun with the dog fight.
Oh yeah.
It's just we're right in it, and he's trying to maneuver his way out of it. He's getting taunted, and he ends up pulling a Top Gun and hitting the brakes, takes the guy out, and has a couple of one-liners, and it's just like, oh, all right, what a cold open that is. I really enjoy. It's almost like a mini episode in itself. I would like to just see what led about that whole incident, but just the little touches like that are cool too. And what the I think the Amy Sedaris' character. I think her name's Pele or Pele, but I like her. I mean, she's really funny, but like, of course, I'm gonna, as a Phantom Menace apologist, I'm gonna be excited when you have some pit droids uh, hanging around.
100%.
It was cool to see them with her, and I just loved her kind of immediate grasp of the child, and again, kind of things we learn about Mando here in his care of him, and his interactions with her. I really do. I really kind of enjoy getting this other side of him that we've seen brief glimpses of, but it's kind of you know just peeking even more in here, and then Toro, like Bobby Cannavale's son. Uh, I like him as well. Uh, Huge fan of his dad. Uh, Notably for me, playing Gyp Rossetti in Boardwalk Empire, which is just a really memorable character for me. I think he has the potential to maybe not be quite as good as his dad, but he's got a future. I think he's pretty good in this kind of as the cocky, again, kind of a Western trope, a cocky gunfighter that kind of looks to attach himself to a more established one. Gets a little too big for his britches, so to speak. Just the way all that comes about, and the talking, and Shan talking him into going for Mando, and just everything, all the turnaround and double crossing. I enjoy it, and I enjoy the way that it plays out. Now, also got to talk about the still unexplained appearance at the end. I think we kind of know who this might be, or at least who it might be in relation to. But we see some boots and a cape on a figure we don't see much else of approaching Shan's body at the end. And there's been a lot of speculation of who that was, who that could be, and there's been mostly talk that it's Boba Fett. I don't know for sure, but we do know that Boba Fett is going to be in season two. And that Tamora Morrison is back. He played Jango Fett in the prequels. And he'll be playing Boba here. I'm kind of really looking like one of the many things this episode did is it kind of opened a door for other things, and this is one thread from the whole season I've been really excited to see be explored in the next. And so that was one thing. Sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of these little fan servicey, open ended type things, but for something like this, I'm all there for it. I think it's interesting. I Even if it ends up not being Boba Fett, just the prospect of this little ending here was exciting unto itself to me. So I'm gonna give this one a B plus. Like I said, I think it's pretty good. It's definitely a little bit got a little bit more than the last one did to it, but I really enjoyed both of them at the end of the day.
I would also go with the B plus. I'm glad you brought up the Sand People moment because that's a really excellent beat that this episode has. Again, adding to that deepening of Star Wars lore, but also just a good moment in the episode in terms of establishing character. Uh, Chapter 6, The Prisoner, bringing back uh, director that we call Rick
Yeah. Oh, Rick.
in lieu of knowing how to pronounce the last name. This one, he actually, just like Filoni wrote this last episode, Rick also wrote this episode along with Christopher Yost, who's been a guy in the Marvel fold as well as a writer on Star Wars Rebels. And this is probably the most distinct episode of the entire season in terms of feeling different from the rest,
Right.
filling in into this episodic territory, barely factoring in the child. Definitely sidelined in this episode. I'm sure that was a big hurt to people wanting more and more of just the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a raid episode following a rogues gallery. Interesting cast to say the least. One of the things that I will say that I absolutely loved when they're showing like the art in the end credits, that one thing that stood out to me was, oh yeah, that looks just like Clancy Brown, more than Clancy Brown looked like Clancy Brown.
Hmm.
The concept art looked much more like him than the Ultimate End makeup did.
Right.
But he's excellent. Definite physical threat. One of those characters that is just all danger.
Right.
Natalia Tina, known very much from Game of Thrones, as well as not really known for being Tonks in Harry Potter, which is one of those shames to me because I absolutely love Tonks in the books, and you barely get any Tonks in the movies. But so it goes.
Right.
That's definitely its own conversation. But yeah, I think she's terrific in this episode. Just so snaky, you know, jumps right in. And one of the things that I think is really funny watching the episode is how much happens without Mandalorian reacting at all. They're giving him all types of feelings and thoughts, and he's just not giving in to any of it. I just like to think that he's just going, and it's a big sigh
Right.
while they're busy uh, seeing who can be bad the best. Especially funny when she's all seductive or suggestive of things they've done in the past,
Yeah, right.
and he doesn't let in one way or the other. And who's to say if there was anything? Like, she's just big talk, but also who knows? We don't know a whole lot about where he's been on the road so far.
Right.
We do know that he's on a certain arc now that the child has started, and he might have always had this side in some ways, a desire for better, a desire for being good, certainly living by a code, but it makes you wonder exactly what path he's been on completely as a character. I think that's something that you definitely think about in this episode.
Right.
I don't know if you could say it's the point of the episode, but it's something that kind of runs through it that you might think about. Like, where has he been in the past? How much has he worked with these seedy characters? I have to say too that I did not expect Bill Burr when I first watched this episode. I love his little sidearm, neat little fun touch. But the other thing I thought was funny about it is like, wait, Bill Burr's an action star? Oh, he's got a mechanical sidearm, so that's helpful. That helps you be effective in combat situations.
Definitely.
Mark Boone Jr. There's so many characters, so many people popping up in here. He's obviously fantastic in so many things. For whatever reason, the first one I always think about is Batman Begins, and I just imagine him. I wish he was like eating a hot dog.
Oh yeah.
Yes, just cause it seems like it would fit in its own way. But no, he's terrific. A terrific presence in this episode, even if he's kind of just a bookend. But it's enough to really get an idea of who he is and what this storyline's been all about, essentially.
Right.
I have no idea. I've heard it before, and I don't know how to pronounce. Speaking of last names, I don't know how to pronounce Richard. Plays Zero.
Yes.
Uh, I know he's not quite Baby Yoda meme level, but I've seen so many IT crowd memes over the years,
Right.
and he's a funny dude and a funny droid in this episode. This episode is overflowing with personalities, big personalities, and also features uh, at the very end cameos from several of the directing talent,
Yeah.
but also features a cameo that I was super shocked to see when it first aired, which was Matt Lanter in live action. Lanter is Anakin Skywalker in Clone Wars, and seeing him in a brief like live action moment and cameo is just a super cool little detail.
Right.
But that part is all really good, and I enjoy the bottle episode nature of the story, the way it's seemingly repurposing the same hallway set over and over again, but managing to do it in unique enough ways as it moves its plot along. It has some fun action as well as many droids are destroyed in the making of this episode
Yes.
and in fun fashion. I just think this episode has a lot of flavor and a really fun entry.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm trying to define exactly what it is. I don't know if it's the perfect version of itself, right?
Right.
But it's good for what it does. I just think that if you were going to talk about where it fails at kind of, I don't know, going the extra mile to tell us about the kind of almost like why it exists
Right.
for this character, because I think it does have hints at something. I just don't think it does. Like, I don't mind that the child is sidelined, but Mando's almost sidelined a little bit too much himself.
Right.
It almost becomes too much about these wild characters, and the wild characters don't have a lot of depth to them.
Right.
So it's like, why are we focusing on them too much? So it's a fun episode. It's a solid episode. I feel like I would personally go with the solid B rating on this episode as well, even though I do think it's a lot of fun in plenty of places.
Yeah. I'm right there with you on that B. Honestly, this is like best way to describe this group is like kind of Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I almost said it.
It's it very much has that vibe. Again, Clancy Brown is just awesome. Huge fan of his. I mean, there you go for a long time listing great movies he's had parts in, but I will always remember him as the Kurgan from Highlander, which was just this role he sunk his teeth into and probably elevated the material because of his performance. Even though I love that movie unapologetically, but he brings a little something extra to it that I don't think is on the page, so to speak. But but anyway, I was very happy that he was in this and that he had a very sizable role, no pun intended. Um, but I really enjoyed him. Talia Tena was awesome in this as well. I mean, like like you said, I'll always think of her as Tonks, but again, you know, she was barely Tonks in Harry Potter, but that's a whole other story.
Do you want to do a whole Tonks episode?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think Richard's last name is Iade, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I probably butchered it, but I've seen some IT Crowd. I haven't seen the whole series, but he's also fantastic in this little other comedy called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is absolutely absurd, but it is hilarious, and he's great in it. And he's awesome as the voice of Zero. He's very comical. And of course, yeah, I was the same with you, with Bill Burr. And of course, he would have a Gungan joke in this. And I think like the strength of this episode is definitely the cast. You know, all these characters. It is the personality because if these characters didn't have personality, I think this episode would suffer a lot more. Just mention Mark Boone Jr. because he's awesome, and again, you know, been in a lot of stuff. Batman Begins, of course. I I'm very kind of middling on this show. I really liked the first four seasons of it, and after that, it became one of the worst shows I've ever seen, and that's Sons of Anarchy. But he was very consistently good on that show, and I really liked him in this too. You can tell that these characters have a past with Mando, and not just because of what they say, but you can kind of see the just in the acting it comes across. But gives us a little hint at who he was before, and again we talk about we kind of know the arc Han Solo had. He was a smuggler and did did some less than savory things, and then and of course his story in Star Wars is his not necessarily redemption because I don't think he was an evil person, but he takes a less selfish path in his life, and I think that Mando's can be boiled down to something similar. But again, we start at the arc. We don't, knowing that he did bad stuff or did like a little more kind of cold stuff with these criminals. It's something, but it's not really knowing it, like you said. It gives us a peek into the past, but it doesn't give us full story. Not that we necessarily have to have it right now or in this episode, but this is about as much of a glimpse as we've had so far, and since not counting his childhood flashbacks. But again, you bring up a good point. Like, what is the point of this episode for this character? I mean, Mando is basically kind of a plot tool in this, and the child is barely in it. And while it's a very fun episode and full of personality, it doesn't necessarily elevate anything for them. And that's what keeps it at a B for me as well. Is just like you said earlier, you perfectly laid it out. I mean, this is an 8 episode season, and feel like when you have that few episodes, you got to be swinging for the fences for on all levels, and you need to be elevating your characters, you need to be elevating the story, and you need to have it all. Not that it all has to be, you could do these little episodic entries, but it needs to be a little more focused. And all three of these episodes, I think, have their strengths. There's some good things, fun things. I mean, I've enjoyed all three of them quite a bit. Uh, like we said last week, B is not a bad grade, and if the worst rating we've given so far is a B, I think that's still speaking pretty highly for show. But I think you know the bar was kind of set high with the first few episodes, especially the episodes 2 and 3, which I appreciate them going for, knowing that hey, we can't have it be, or choosing it not to be an intense down the line same story all the time, always being chased with the child, because that would get old, or it would probably run its course, and they wouldn't be able to do more than more than one season, because the story would probably have to eventually end sooner than later. I would like to see the show kind of improve on these little episodic entries. Just have them focus a little more on the characters, and have the episodes, even if they aren't the core of what the season plans are. You know, have your main characters be pivotal in it, and make it at least have some kind of impact. I think that maybe that's easier said than done, but I'm sitting watching reruns of a show that started 10 years ago that does it almost every episode, and makes it seem effortless. So with Justified, and I mean that's apples and oranges. You got completely different crews, but I know that these guys, these writers, they're good. Um, I have my qualms with John Favreau, but I also think he's capable of very good stuff, and proven it in just this show. I think Dave Filoni is awesome, and I like Rick. um, So, and I really like kind of the flavor this episode had. But like I said, I don't think it's too much to ask to have a little bit more into it, especially if we're going to invest so much time into these characters. I would, just to see a little bit more elevation for them would be great. But again, this is the worst we have to say. It's not bad. These aren't bad episodes by any stretch of the imagination. I have seen much worse television, unfortunately. Uh, there's lots of bad TV out there, and this is not it. It could be a lot better, but at the point, it can be almost called nitpicking, I guess. But when it comes to Star Wars, the standards are a little bit higher, and even though this is called The Mandalorian, it's very much a Star Wars show, and um, there's a lot that comes with that. That it's, I think that we might see an improvement in the next season. I've seen a lot of the talent that's coming back, and a lot of talent that they've got directing, that haven't directed episodes before. It's going to be really interesting to see uh, what happens next season. But again, I'm gonna definitely stick with the B plus B for both of us, unanimous again on this one.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy enough to see Dave Filoni's episode be the best of this bunch, and that's not to slight um, the other two directors and the writers behind them,
Right.
but the thing, like, these are three episodes that don't do everything that they could in terms of pushing character and story, and especially character. Like, I don't mind that we slow down for a bit here in the middle of the season, but it could have been more character. There's hints of character. There's hints of what these stories could have done. Our middle episode, the Filoni episode, Gunslinger, kind of does, in my opinion, the most with its world, building its own little reality in that story. Arguably, Sanctuary does the most with character, and they all have little touches that are nice and that are fun. But
Right.
it's 8 episode season. I don't want to beat that too hard, but
Yeah.
yeah, it does jumping ahead just a little bit. It's like disappointing in the sense of I feel like I hate to use the word disappointing when it comes to what season one of The Mandalorian is, but because it's not really disappointing, it's really good. It has so much stuff that I really enjoy, but so much of it feels like prologue, and I wanted to see more within the season as a unit. And here are these 3 episodes stuck in the middle that kind of showcase that lack of momentum the most. But yeah, next time we meet for this, we'll be talking about the final 2 episodes of the season. And spoilers, the pace picks up a bit in terms of moving plot along and starting to go somewhere. But we'll discuss that a lot more on the next episode. In the meantime, Drew, thank you, my friend.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure.
Stay tuned, friends. Next time on TV Binge Drinking.